Hello everyone and welcome. This is Marika and thank you so much for stopping by today. Today I'm going to make this card here. It is a bit layered for my usual style, but I had fun making it. I started by stamping the images from Whimsical Flowers set onto a cream-colored cardstock. I used Altenew Buttercream ink for the flowers and Altenew Frayed Leaf ink for the leaves. I colored the flowers and the leaves only with colored pencils today. I made a similar card actually about a year ago for my second guest design post for Altenew, and later I was kindly asked to make a video tutorial how I colored the flowers. Well, it is finally here, and for those of you who had asked for it, I would like to say thank you for your patience. For my excuse, I would like to say though that I did make this quite soon after it was asked. I did film it twice, and twice I got my head on the way that the video part was quite unusable. Well, here it is, and hopefully you still find it helpful. Today's card is a bit different than the one from a year ago, but the same technique applies here. Back then I used Desert Storm cardstock from Nina, and I colored the flowers with different colors of pencils. Since then I've upgraded my colored pencils to Faber-Castell Polychroma pencils. Polychromos gives more detailed look, or you are able to gain more detailed look with polychromos, so these may have more details than the ones before. Today I also used cream-colored cardstock, so the highlights on these flowers are somewhat cream than bright white. Well, anyhow, let's go into coloring of these images here. As you can see, this technique doesn't really require blending. Actually, there are some, but I'm shamelessly leaving the pencil lines to show. I kinda liked the texture it added to the images. I used 4 colors, and if you're interested on the exact colors I used, I list them on my blog, so please head over there to look them up if you wish. I just find that you can use whatever colors you have, since they don't need to blend that well together, and as you can see, these doesn't even really blend that nicely. But I wanted to get more contrast by adding colors different from each other. I started with my lightest color, which is the Naples yellow, and I laid it down and sketched my shadows. I usually always color like this because I don't really know where the shadows might be by instinct. So I lay down my lightest color, and after that it is easier for me to see where the shadows might be. On my YouTube channel, I was asked to give tips and tricks if one is coloring an image where the shadows are not so clear where they are. How do I know where they go? I haven't answered the question yet for her, so sorry, because I needed to think about it, and honestly, I still don't really have a good answer for you. Usually I have a hunch where the shadows might be, but sometimes it is not the right one. And if you start with the light color, you can usually go over it with a darker color in pretty much in every coloring medium there is. And we who color stamped images, we are actually quite lucky because we don't have a reference photo to whom we should be loyal to. We can color as we like, and I usually like to go with the image. If I lay my shadows in some areas and I like how it looks, I just go with it. If you look at my coloring, there are a huge amount of errors if you look at them in shading wise. But you know, you and me who color, we are the artist in that particular image, and we have the artistic freedom, doesn't we? My tip is just to go with the image and let it talk to you. At this point, I'm pretty much done with my base layer. Now I take my darkest tone and go over the areas that should be the darkest. By other means, I add more contrast, and by adding contrast, you can achieve more shape. I also clean up my edges, since that also makes a huge difference in some parts of the images. It is kinda like focusing an image with your photo camera. I colored the other flower with the same technique as I did with this more orange one. I kinda wanted the 2 flowers be the same, but still be different. On the more brown one, I didn't use that bright orange as my darkest tone. Instead, I used the darker brown. And after colored the second image, you can see the first one looks kinda dull. So I went in again to add more value to the image, which basically means that I make the darkest parts more darker. I used the same brown, which was the darkest color on the second flower, to tone the first flower down a bit too. It looked too bright next to the brown flower for me. And now they look much more better on the card together. Now we can proceed coloring the centers and the leaves of these flowers. For the centers, I used the same colors as in the flowers. I started with the yellow and added light brown and more darker brown to give the shadows and the shapes. Now we can color the leaves. I will only show you how I colored the first one, since I colored the other two to be the same. And the leaves are not going to be the focal point in this card anyways, and half of the leaves will be tucked behind the flower, so they're not that important anyways. I started with the lightest color and sketched my shadows once again. After that, I go over the light green, more and more darker greens, and add more contrast and value. At the end, I go over the whole leaf with the light yellowish color to reburnish the image. It just makes the image look softer and it blends the colors together. I will cut the images with coordinating dies, and while stamping the images, I kept in mind to leave enough room between the images so I can use as many dies as possible with one go to the cutting machine. That saves a lot of time to do multiple die cutting at the same time. I also cut a card front panel from the same colored cream cardstock as I colored the flowers and the leaves, and later I will use the same cardstock as my card base. Sometimes these type of dies are difficult to use as they have so many small pieces involved, but as you can see, this cuts beautifully and I didn't have any trouble with it. I also cut a square out of cream colored vellum to go behind my flowers. I adhered the flowers with some glue dots. I will stamp the sentiment to the vellum piece and later heat emboss it. Before stamping, you really want to use some sort of anti-static tool to erase the static so the embossing powder sticks only there where you want it to stick. And now it is the most exciting part. The sentiment says "to my friend" in Finnish, and it is Altenew sentiment. My first stamp set is going to be released within few weeks and I'm so excited about it. I used clear embossing powder and I used my heat tool to heat set it. I then glued the die cut panel with liquid glue to my card front, and I figured that it is quite fine to glue the edges very well and use dots here and there in the middle. It should hold just fine. I then adhered the floral arrangement with foam tape and liquid glue to my vellum, and then the vellum piece onto my card front. And then to add some sparkle, I finished up the card with some clear sequins. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this video and found it helpful. I list all the products that I use to my blog, and the link will be at the description below. Please visit Altenew blog for more inspiration. Thank you very much for your time. See you soon. Bye!